If you took out a 30-year mortgage on a newly built home within the last couple of years, there's a real chance you just financed a structure that won't survive the loan. Nobody's talking about this openly, but they should be. For the first time in American housing history, the house wears out before the debt does. Your great-uncle's stone farmhouse was built to outlive 3 generations. The subdivision home being hammered together down the street from you? It's designed to hold together just long enough for the builder to cash out. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how that happens, the construction shortcuts, the material swaps, the legal traps, and we're going to tell you the one inspection move that can save you from buying a very expensive mistake. Let's start at the root of the problem. Who's actually building these homes? 2 or 3 decades ago, residential construction was dominated by local builders. Small operations. Guys who went to church with their clients, whose kids went to the same schools. Your reputation followed you to the grocery store. That accountability meant something. It shaped how you built. Fast forward to today, and a handful of massive, publicly traded corporations control the majority of new home construction in America. These aren't craftsmen. They're production machines optimized for volume and margin. Every decision, from the lumber grade to the cabinet hinges, flows through a spreadsheet designed to protect quarterly profits, not the family moving in. And the engine that makes all of this possible is something called piece rate production. But first, let's dismantle the single biggest lie on every new construction sales floor: built to code. When a salesperson smiles and tells you the home is fully code compliant, what you hear is quality assurance. What the builder hears is minimum acceptable threshold. Building codes aren't a standard of excellence. They're a legal floor, the lowest grade of construction you can deliver without facing penalties. Bragging that a house is built to code is like a restaurant bragging that the health inspector didn't shut them down. It tells you almost nothing about what you're actually getting. And in volume construction, the entire game is about grazing that minimum standard as closely as possible, scraping pennies off every square foot without technically crossing the legal line. Nowhere is this more dangerous than beneath your feet. The foundation problem nobody warns you about. Volume builders don't shop for good land. They shop for cheap land, flood-prone lots, graded hillsides, former wetlands, and they make it buildable through a process involving fill dirt. Here's what that looks like. They strip the stable topsoil off the site, often sell it separately for profit, then bring in truckloads of fill material that hasn't had years to naturally compress and settle. They mechanically compact it, pour concrete on top, and move on to the next unit. The problem is that dirt doesn't respect deadlines. Over the first several years, that fill material continues to shift and compress beneath the slab. The concrete above it begins to crack. We're watching brand new homes, some barely 5 years old, develop serious foundation failures not because of neglect, but because the ground they sit on was never truly stable to begin with. And once a foundation moves, everything connected to it moves with it. The labor incentive that's ruining your walls. Old-school carpenters were paid hourly. That payment structure, boring as it sounds, was actually a quality control mechanism. A guy getting paid by the hour has a reason to stop, recheck his measurements, pull out a crooked nail, and do it right. He's not losing money by being careful. Modern production framing crews operate on flat-fee contracts. The crew gets a set amount to frame a house. Whether they finish in 8 days or 16, the check is the same. That structure creates one priority: speed. Every minute spent fixing a mistake is a minute of lost earning. So mistakes don't get fixed. Ducts get crushed during rough-in and stay crushed. Roof flashing gets skipped because it slows down the roofing crew. Window installations get rushed, leaving gaps where water quietly infiltrates the wall cavity, invisible for years, catastrophic when discovered. This isn't a few bad apples. This is the system working exactly as designed. The materials that are engineered to expire. Here's where it gets structural, literally. The lumber your grandfather's house was framed with came from old-growth forests. Dense grain, tight rings, naturally resistant to moisture. That wood could get rained on during construction, dry out, and keep performing for a century. Today's framing lumber comes from fast-growth tree farms. The wood is harvested young, is softer, sappier, and far less dimensionally stable. It warps, crowns, and twists as it dries, sometimes while it's already inside your walls. For floor systems, builders have largely abandoned solid lumber altogether in favor of engineered I-joists, a composite product made from wood fiber, adhesive, and pressed board. On paper, they perform adequately. In practice, they have one catastrophic vulnerability: water. A slow, hidden plumbing leak, the kind that drips inside a wall for months without triggering a visible stain, can saturate an I-joist and dissolve the adhesive holding it together. The structural component doesn't weaken. It disintegrates. There's no patch for that. The floor system has to come out. And, because modern energy codes require homes to be tightly wrapped in vapor barriers and house wrap, moisture that gets in doesn't get out. It just sits there, feeding mold, rotting whatever it touches, compounding silently for years. The granite countertop trick. Builders understand human psychology better than most people realize. They know that buyers don't inspect what they can't see, so they invest in what you can see. Walk-in closets, waterfall kitchen islands, stainless appliances, luxury vinyl plank flooring that looks like hardwood. These are the finishes that close deals. What you don't see is that the fixtures installed in new construction are almost never the same products you'd buy off a store shelf. Manufacturers quietly produce two product lines: a consumer version with metal internals and a builder-grade version with plastic components that looks nearly identical on the outside. Same brand logo, same finish, different guts. The builder version is engineered to function through the warranty period, typically 1 year, and then become your problem. Faucet cartridges, shower valves, toilet fill mechanisms, all plastic, all on a clock. The legal clause that strips your rights. Here's the part of the conversation that makes people genuinely angry. If you've bought a new construction home in the last decade, there is almost certainly a clause buried in your purchase agreement called a binding arbitration provision. By signing that contract, which most buyers do without reading it in full, you surrendered your right to pursue a jury trial against the builder. If your foundation heaves, if your walls develop mold, if your floor system collapses, you don't get a courtroom. You get a conference room and a private arbitrator, frequently selected from a pool with ties to the builder's industry. No public record of the proceedings. No appeal process. The outcome is sealed. It's a private legal system engineered to limit the builder's exposure. Combined with expiring materials, speed-driven labor, and zero meaningful legal leverage, what you end up with is not just a bad house. You end up with a systematically failing neighborhood. Why entire subdivisions will collapse together. In older communities, housing deterioration is random. One neglected house pulls the street down slowly, but the surrounding homes provide resilience. In a modern subdivision, every single home was assembled during the same 6 to 12-month construction window, using the same material specifications, the same labor crews, the same corner-cutting decisions. When the 15-year clock runs out, it runs out for everyone simultaneously. Roofing systems fail across the entire street. Siding begins to buckle block by block. Foundation cracks appear in multiple homes at once as the filled dirt beneath them finally settles. No buyer wants to enter that market. Values crater. The neighborhood that was marketed as a fresh start becomes a synchronized liability. You're not buying a house. You're buying into a shared depreciation schedule. So what do? This isn't an argument against buying new construction entirely. It's an argument against buying it blindly. If you're going to purchase a new build, you have one meaningful tool available to you: the pre-drywall inspection. Most buyers hire a home inspector after the home is complete, when the walls are painted, the trim is installed, and every defect is sealed behind finished surfaces. That inspection tells you almost nothing. What you need is a private inspector, not one referred by the builder, walking the property while the framing is exposed. Before the insulation goes in. Before the drywall goes up. While you can still see the ductwork, the window rough openings, the floor joists, the plumbing connections. That's the only window you have to demand corrections before they get buried forever. It costs a few $100s. Relative to a 30-year financial commitment, it might be the most valuable money you spend in the entire transaction. Physics doesn't negotiate. Quarterly earnings don't change how concrete cures or how adhesive responds to moisture. The builders know this. The question is whether you do before you sign.